Good evening. Welcome to the ASV's Galactic Center Star Party Deep Sky session, Space Invaders. Before we begin, I would like to say that in the spirit of reconciliation, the Astronomical Society of Victoria acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. This evening, it's time for our 5th live stream of the night. We have our intrepid Deep Sky life stacking team here to share objects from the deep as we invade space. And we will draw the raffle shortly. So I hope you've got all your fingers crossed and your lucky charms at hand. And if you're enjoying today's streams and this evening's stream on Facebook, you can donate stars, and on YouTube, you can donate stickers. And if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and follow our Facebook and YouTube pages. And with all the formalities out of the way, it's time to bring in the team and spin the wheel. So we have Cloudy McCloudface, Lee, who's surrounded by clouds at the moment. We have Michael the Comet King with us tonight. Andy, who's way out west where the rain don't fall.
No, right now.
Therm, the Terminator, he's back. Stefan Nebula, and the man who's going to save the live stream tonight, our Lord and Saviour Caleb from Queensland, who's got clear skies. So thank you, Caleb. Should be a fun night. We do have Anne-Marie waiting in the wings just in case it does clear up where she is. So we've got quite a few people on the stream watching, so I might maybe have a quick chat about the viewing list tonight. Steve, you'd like to run through some of the items we're going to look at while I get the raffle draw ready.
Right. Okay. So we're going to focus our attention initially up to the northern horizon. We're going to take advantage of Caleb's few additional degrees. I think it's about 10 degrees extra of over the horizon that he gets up in Queensland compared with us mob down here in Melbourne. And we're going to look at a few different objects around the constellation Cygnus, not just in Cygnus, but around Cygnus. So we've got a few nebulae, we've got a couple of planetary nebulae as well. So some good objects that we actually don't get to see very often from this part of the world, particularly down here in Melbourne. And then we're going to shift over. Hopefully, we may have to swap around a little bit depending on what the sky does, and we'll see how we go. We're going to shift around to the east and the southeast to have a look over at a range of objects. We've got I think we've got a couple of 2 or 3 galaxies in Sculptor, the Groose Quartet, 2 or 3 planetary nebulae as well. So we've got a good old mix of objects for us to look at. But I think we were going to start off up in the north, up to the horizon, and keep our fingers crossed that Caleb can, as the name suggests, be our Lord and Saviour this evening.
All right, now before we do that, I think we better do the raffle. So hopefully everybody can see that and everybody has their fingers crossed. And I am about to click the button and we'll see who won the Iotron Skyguider mount and tracking ball and tripod. Here we go.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I hope I win.
You can't.
Gavin Salter. Gavin has won. Could win the prize. It was Gavin.
Congratulations,
Gavin. Well, it's up to Gavin. If he decides he wants to have the prize, he can. If he decides he's happy to redraw it, then maybe later on we might redraw. We'll leave that one to Gavin, but I think he might want the prize. Congratulations, Gavin. You've won the door
He probably
prize.
only bought 1 ticket too.
He probably did only buy 1 ticket because he's a bit tight, isn't he? All right, so Stuart, no way. I agree, Stuart. I think it's rigged. It's got to have been rigged if Gavin won it. That's not fair. I know some people that, because I saw all the tickets come in, and I know who bought what. There were some people who bought 30 or 40 tickets, and Gavin probably bought one and has won. Lucky bugger.
Yep.
Oh well. All right, let's get started, shall we? First object for the night. That's not the first object for no. That's the wrong person. Lord and Savior, here we come. Caleb, you're up.
Yeah, so we have the M57 Ring Nebula. So you can see actually it's quite a small planetary nebula. So I have to zoom in quite a bit. So I'm just currently on hydrogen alpha. I'm doing a 1 minute exposure. We'll give it another 5 seconds before it pops up.
We can start talking about.
Yes, you can. Go for it. Start telling all the viewers what they're looking at.
I think anyone that's watched any others, I did a session at one of our monthly meetings where we had a look at a few planetary nebulae, and I did say then that the Ring Nebula is definitely in my top 5 of objects that I'd like to look at visually through a telescope, and that view hasn't changed at all. It's still definitely one of my top 5. So this is it's 2,400 light years away. It's a planetary nebula, and it's in the constellation Lyra, and it's a reasonably bright object. You can see this fairly readily in a small to medium-sized telescope. Quite difficult to resolve the central star, though. I think you need a very big telescope. Maybe able to with our 40-inch telescope, but not too sure. So it's one of the objects that takes magnification really well. It stays really quite sharp as well, visually, that is. It's pretty small. It's only 1.5 by 1 arc minute in size, and it's about 1 light year across. It's very, very young. It's a little baby. It's only about 6,000 to 8,000 years old, and will probably only last about 20,000 years. So planetary nebula are sort of fleeting objects in time. They appear and then they disappear in astronomical terms almost instantly. I can probably explain a little bit more about what, we'll use this object as an opportunity to talk about what a planetary nebula actually is. So it's the last stage of evolution of a medium-sized star. So stars something like the size of our sun, perhaps a little bit bigger than our sun, but about the size of our sun, that's shed its outer layers but hasn't exploded into a supernova. Supernovas only really happen with much bigger stars. So the medium-sized stars are. Oh, there we go. There's a bit of colour.
This is from Michael. Yeah.
So if we take our sort of sun as an example, we're about halfway through the main sequence life of our sun. It's about 5 billion years old, and in another 5 billion years or so, when the sun has expanded into a red giant, which it will definitely do, eventually what will happen is that the fusion reactions will start in the center of the sun, will start to diminish. And they'll sort of, if you like, give in to the pressure of gravity from the material in the outer part of the star. And what happens is, as gravity starts to take over again, it starts to make the inner parts of the star heat up again, which then forces the outer parts of the star to get driven away in sort of shells of gas and other material. And then what's left after all that, the outer parts of the star have been blown off, if you like, is you end up with a white dwarf star in the middle. And the white dwarf star is really quite a hot star by this time, and it starts to emit quite substantial amounts of ultraviolet radiation, which then ionize the shells of gas and other material that have been blown off, and producing that sort of glowing effect of the planetary nebula. So that's a sort of a brief I don't know whether, Stefan, do you want to add anything else about planetary nebulae?
Just a few general things. So, as you said, planetary nebulae are usually sort of released in sort of shells. And it's quite typical that when we look at planetary nebulae, what we're seeing when we look with our eye or with short exposures like we're doing now, what we're seeing is the really bright core. But oftentimes there are much dimmer outer shells that only really present themselves once you take really, really long exposures, and specifically using narrowband filters as well. And this is also the case with M57, the Ring Nebula here. Most photos that are taken of this object, we take anywhere from 1 hour to 5 hours, something like that. And that's plenty of time to expose the core beautifully. But if you take really, really long total exposure length images of this target, you'll start to discern some really exquisite, really faint outer shells, which I've only ever seen in a couple astrophotos. So for you imagers out there, that's a really, really good challenge, not just with the Ring Nebula, but with most planetary nebula. Really push your exposures and see what you can see, because there's a lot more there than meets the eye. One other interesting thing, more specifically about the Ring Nebula, is that this nebula is thought to have given the name Planetary Nebula to the planetary nebulae. This is because the Ring Nebula was discovered in 1779 by Charles Messier, and this observation was then followed up by another, I believe, French astronomer, Antoine Daguerre, who described it as a planet which looks like it's fading. And it's thought that this description is basically the cause for the name Planetary Nebula. And another little interesting tidbit about the M57, it's called the Ring Nebula, not because it sort of looks like a spherical ring, but because early observations of it thought that it was actually a ring of stars, because they could only really see the sort of brighter outer ring of it. So yeah, but in a lot of planetary nebulae have a sort of symmetrical structure. Occasionally they're spherical, occasionally they're bipolar, occasionally they have some kind of spiral symmetry. And this is what's thought to be the case with the Ring Nebula here. It's actually thought to be shaped a bit like a cylinder, an elongated cylinder, and we're just happening to look right down the middle of that cylinder.
Yes, I think they've done 3D studies, haven't they, from here that suggests that shape. If we were in another part of the Milky Way galaxy, then we'd probably call it the Barrel Nebula or the Tube Nebula rather than the Ring Nebula.
Silence is golden. You think we've run out of things to say about that one, haven't we?
We have.
Anything else we want to add to that one?
It's while we're moving to the next one. Obviously, this is M57, so it's one of Charles Messier's catalogued items that he discovered back in the 18th century. Number 57 in his catalogue. So one thing we can be pretty certain of, because Charles told us, is that it's not a comet.
Charles Messier's catalogue of not comets.
Yeah.
I'll try to give you a color image of, so it's moderately overexposed. So just because M57 is such a bright target, realistically, I should have done maybe even 30-second exposure instead of a minute exposure. So just letting PixInsight do its thing. But we can just make out the color. If I put it down a little bit more, too much. There we go. We're just about to see the hydrogen alpha core, the ring, and the blue-ish tinge core in the middle. That is associated to oxygen 3. So yeah, that's M57.
Yeah, it has a sort of a pretty strong red outer ring, and then the center has a sort of greenish, bluish, greenish tinge to it, really. There is a central star there, but it's apparently magnitude 15.8. So that would still be, that's not visible in a sort of a medium-sized telescope, where your limiting magnitude there is going to be around about 14. But with our bigger scopes that we have up at the LMDSS, you may be able to see the central white dwarf.
Yeah, so I didn't do the math for my telescope, but if I were to guess, my limiting magnitude would be about 15. So I would be able to just be able to resolve it, but ideally you probably would want a 11-inch, which the resolving the limiting magnitude could be all the way up to 18 to 20 if you're lucky.
How are we looking for the next object?
Yep, I'll swing over to the next one.
All right, while you do that, Steve, we did do a telescope session last night, but Jody is asking, is there a telescope you'd suggest for a beginner? I guess the question really is are we talking just visual? I'm assuming we're talking visually beginner.
I can probably talk, I won't say with authority, but certainly from quite a bit of experience with visual astronomy, because I used to look after our lone telescope scheme, which I've sort of now handed over, but I'm now looking after what we call our Astronomy for the People section, where we go out to schools, and it's mainly visual astronomy that we're doing. I think a good starter telescope is a Dobsonian style of telescope. You can't do astrophotography with a Dobsonian telescope, but as a visual scope, they're really great because you get a lot of scope for your money. So something like an 8-inch or a 10-inch Dobsonian telescope, so that's the size of the mirror. These are Newtonian reflectors on a Dobsonian base. What makes them really good is that they are quite simple to use. The scope that you can see in the picture there, Caleb's scope, which is on what's called an equatorial mount, they're quite hard to get your head around how they work, and they're expensive as well. A Dobsonian scope is a simple alt-azimuth wooden base that the telescope fits into. Nice and easy to use. They're very stable, and as I say, you get such a lot of telescope for your money. So an 8-inch telescope is going to be something like, these days, about $700, something like that. Just under $1,000 for a 10-inch telescope, if you can stretch to that. That would include some eyepieces and a finder scope as well. So you're just about ready to roll, really, for that money. You don't have to spend a lot of extra money. You would probably supplement that with some nice planisphere software on an iPad, or perhaps even on a phone, or some paper star charts if you've not got electronic, and that would be about it, really.
All right, so we think we've got our next object up. So this is one that Andy got way out west before the clouds rolled in on him. So you got one image. How long is that image for, Andy, before the clouds annoyed you?
2 minutes. I got 2 minutes on that one. It's with my.
Not bad for 2 minutes, is it?
Yeah, I should be able to zoom this in. using this zoom button. Did that work? I think it did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yep. Yeah, so that's 2 minutes for the modded DSLR, and it was crystal clear for that 2-minute patch. It was cloudy before and cloudy now, and there's a little bit of drizzle, but I'm still I'm checking now. No, it's still flashing. So yeah, clouds are still out there, and I can hear a slight little bit of rain on top of my tent, and lots of bugs. I'm full of bugs inside this tent. They're everywhere.
So Mark, you know this is the Apple Core Nebula, isn't it?
It's not the Dumbbell Nebula. It is indeed the Apple Core Nebula, because it looks like the shriveled up apples that I find in my daughter's bedroom on her bed.
We're still looking down.
Exactly like that.
We're still looking down towards the north, a little bit higher in the sky. Over on the other side, the Ring Nebula is sort of on the western side of the constellation Cygnus, and the Dumbbell Nebula is over on the eastern side of Cygnus, a little bit higher up in the constellation Vulpecula. It's a similar magnitude to the Ring Nebula, a little bit brighter, but quite a lot bigger than the Ring Nebula. So it's 8 by 6 arc minutes. This object is a little bit closer as well. It's 1,200 light years away. Spotted by Charles Messier, hence the catalogue designation of not a comet 27.
Not a comet 27.
And he included it in the catalogue in 1764. So I think one of the things that's nice about the Dumbbell Nebula is you can see as the image would develop, you would start to see a lot of sort of knots of gas and dust within that sort of blue part of the. Did I say it was a planetary nebula? I hope I did. So it's the same sort of object as the Ring Nebula. So it's the last stages of a medium-sized star again. And these sort of knots form when the stellar wind coming from the white dwarf in the center are just not really powerful enough to completely blow away the shells of gas, and it sort of leaves sort of like strings and streamers of matter throughout the whole of the nebula. That's the theory anyway. And they change quite rapidly over time as well. As I mentioned earlier on, these objects are very fleeting objects. We're only going to see them for about 20,000 years, which in astronomical terms is a blink of the eye almost. Make the most of them while we can see them. Current thinking is that our sun in about 5 billion years may become a planetary nebula. They're not quite sure whether the sun is quite big enough, but keep our fingers crossed and let's hope somewhere else in the Milky Way, some other intelligent life form in another 5 or 6 billion years gets some beautiful views as our sun blows off those shells of gas as it turns into a white dwarf.
Yeah,
just before we continue, I just wanted to sort of let everyone know we seem to be having. It looks like there's a lot of issues at the moment with YouTube and Facebook. So if you think somebody might be wanting to watch this, if you could share it, that would be wonderful, because it's not quite doing what it should be doing from our live stream point of view. Facebook and YouTube seem to be playing up a fair bit. Stefan, take it away.
Sure. So I was just going to add, you were saying, Steve, that they're really sort of almost blowing up in slow motion. And I think that's sort of a good way to think about it as well. It's easy to think of this object that we're looking at as just sort of a static snapshot. But again, this is an incredibly violent, incredibly dynamic thing that we're watching unfold. In fact, the gases in this nebula are expanding away from the Progenitor Star at around 30 kilometers per second. So incredibly, incredibly fast. And by measuring the speed of this expansion, we can sort of roll back the clock and estimate the age of these planetary nebulae. And estimating the age of this particular nebula, M57, gives us an estimate around 10,000 years. So it's been expanding like this for the past 10 or so thousand years, and will probably do so for another 10,000. And like I was saying with the Ring Nebula, this is another example of a planetary nebula which has really quite dim outer shells. And in fact, on this nebula, they call the ears, because they really do sort of look like ears sticking out from the side of the nebula itself. And this is what's called ejection in a bipolar nature. So it's coming out at two poles. And this is pretty typical for planetary nebulae. And this is because the Progenitor Stars, the star that causes the planetary nebula, is within its own planetary system, like our own sun in our solar system. And because the material within that solar system exists in a plane, just like it does in our solar system, material that's ejected from the star has a harder time moving through the material that already exists within that plane. And so it tends to come out in a sort of bipolar way, one from the top and one from the bottom. And so that's fairly typical for these planetary nebulae. But yeah, again, planetary nebulae are fantastic for narrowband imaging because they only typically emit in very specific wavelengths. And two of those are wavelengths that we typically use, hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3. And a lot of them also emit in nitrogen wavelength, nitrogen 2, I believe it is. But the nitrogen 2 wavelength is very, very similar to that of hydrogen alpha. So unless you have a narrowband filter with a very, very narrow band pass, you're likely including the emission from the nitrogen wavelength with your hydrogen wavelength. But with very expensive narrowband filters, you can select out those specific wavelengths and then map them to slightly different colors, and they accentuate different structures within the nebula itself.
So I was just going to say, Caleb, how many? We've got 3 stacks of how long are these each of these ones?
They are all 1 minute.
So this is 3 minutes of exposure.
3 minutes of exposure. That's correct on hydrogen alpha.
Wonderful. Just quickly, shout out from South Germany. Good evening, Tommy. Glad to have you on board. Now,
so we've just finished the 4th hydrogen alpha sub, moving
so
over
to
to
add
oxygen
another one.
3. Yeah,
so it's about to add another one to it, is it?
Yeah. So you won't see much different. If anything, you'll probably look a little bit worse, just because I'm getting some high clouds.
Maybe don't add any more to it then.
Quick.
Yeah.
Move on.
Next object.
All right. Let's move on to the next object.
What's our next object, Steve? Oh.
Well, I was kind of expecting Sharpless 101, but
it will be.
Right. Okay.
There we go. Tulip, is that the Tulip Nebula then, is it?
Good stuff, Mark. Well done.
Got nothing to do with the fact that I have a spreadsheet in front of me. Don't tell anyone. So who wants to tell us a little bit about Sharpless 101 or the Tulip Nebula?
Yeah, I guess I can start us off. So the Tulip Nebula is what we call an emission nebula. So this is a region of gas and dust that's excited by energetic stars that are embedded within it or nearby to it. And that excitation then leads to emission in specific wavelengths, usually associated with hydrogen alpha, sulfur 2, oxygen 3. These are the typical wavelengths that we image these nebulae with. And so this particular nebula is around 6,000 light years away in the constellation Cygnus, which is the Swan. And the Tulip Nebula itself is around 70 light years in diameter. Now, do we actually have an image of the Tulip Nebula coming?
We do, yes. Yes.
I'm plate solving at the moment.
Plate solving
Beautiful.
at the moment.
Cool. Because there's one really interesting object within the Tulip Nebula that I'd like to point out. So I can definitely do that once we get an image up. I won't spoil it.
We can watch Caleb do his work.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should explain here that we're putting a lot of pressure on Caleb, because normally what we do with these sessions, when we've got at least two people with clear skies, is that one person shows an object while the other person is moving to the next object and done the plate solving and then started to capture some subs. But poor old Caleb is having to do the whole thing himself. So we will have these little gaps.
So
I helped for 2
there's
minutes.
Some bad news.
Oh, cloud's coming in. Oh.
So we'll hopefully get some. Go away, Pixon.
See what we
We'll
can
hopefully
get in
see
there.
something within.
I've actually got an image from Anne-Marie of Tulip. I'm just trying to find which one it is. What object is it?
Sharpless. So SH2-101.
SH2-101. Don't know. Is that it?
I like that. Don't know. Is that it? We can't tell. Let's have a look. Shall we have a look?
That's it.
Yep.
That is it. Even I know that's it. Come on. Yeah, did she give you the details on that? Did she
That's
tell
a
you?
beautiful image, isn't it?
Steve, you know I took that with my phone. Did she give you the details, Lee?
No, I'm just asking now. So
ask her, and we'll let the guys tell us a little bit more about what we're looking at. Because it does look like a tulip, actually. I can see a tulip in that shape.
It's tulip that's sort of open out. It's not that sort of closed cup one. It's the open cup tulip.
Absolutely is. So, Stefan, do you have a little bit more to add about tulip, or?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm not sure if we can zoom into this image. There's one star that I would like to point out.
I don't think I can for some reason. Let me just check. Where did I get that from? I might have to copy it locally. Hang on.
I've got a sub on me.
Here we go. While Lee does that.
Bit of a weird thing. It doesn't like doing that when it's on a network drive. So
this is a live image of tulip.
Yep. So hopefully we'll get a second minute in before the cloud rolls in.
Pass. Yeah.
Hopefully pass quickly. So that's the tulip. So the way I framed it is actually off center. So because I want to include more of the dust, but this will be the Tulip Nebula, or the tulip part of the Tulip Nebula.
I've got that zoomed in now.
There we go. Wait for it to clear up a bit.
And it's it's an unfinished image, which of course Anne-Marie would say, because all of hers are absolutely beautiful images and put us to shame.
So if you can move up a little bit, just to the sort of top tip of the tulip. Yep, there. So that bright star, that bright blue star, your mouse was just near it. No, back to the right-hand side. Just to the tip, right there. That bright star isn't actually exactly a star. It's a really, really cool object called a Micro Quasar, and its technical name is Cygnus X1, meaning Cygnus X-ray source 1, because it's a really, really bright X-ray source in the night sky. And so what a Micro Quasar is, where quasars are gigantic feeding active black holes, a Micro Quasar is essentially a feeding active stellar mass black hole. So in that little dot right there, there is a black hole that's 15 times the mass of our own sun, in about the size, with a Schwarzschild radius, which is essentially the event horizon of the black hole. So its diameter is around 45 kilometers, but it contains 15 solar masses. And around this black hole orbits a supermassive star companion that's itself 21 solar masses and is 20 times the diameter of the sun. And so the black hole is actually actively feeding on this supermassive black hole, on the supermassive star. And the star is, meanwhile, orbiting the black hole once every 6 days. And it's actually orbiting incredibly, incredibly close to the black hole at only 0.2 astronomical units. So 20%, or 5 times closer to the black hole than our Earth is to our own sun. So it's a massive, massive star orbiting incredibly closely to a black hole that's actively feeding on it. And in the act of doing so, in the act of feeding on this star, the black hole is shooting out really powerful jets of radiation. And some of these jets are actually creating what's called a bow shock, which you can't quite make out in this image. But if you image for a very, very long time using an O3 filter, you'll start to see a sort of blue arc sort of to the left top of the image. And this is actually the shock wave produced from the energy released from this actively feeding black hole. So it's a really, really incredible object. And again, a great challenge for astro imagers to pull this detail out. And a couple just sort of fun, sort of unrelated, unscientific little facts I found out about this black hole while I was reading about it, is that in 1975, Stephen Hawking and Kip Thorne, another incredible astrophysicist, actually had an argument and a debate and made a bet that Cygnus X1 was not a black hole. Stephen Hawking took the affirmative that it was not a black hole, and eventually conceded in 1990 when evidence mounted that indeed this very strange object was actually a black hole. And yeah, like I mentioned, it's one of the brightest X-ray sources in the night sky. And also another random interesting tidbit, if any of you guys in the audience like the band Rush actually made a 2-part song, 20-minute song about this black hole, Cygnus X1. So look it up. It's really good. I listened to it today, and gotta love Rush.
If you want another another fun fact going back to the 70s, 1979, the movie The Black Hole, which was my absolute favorite. The ship that the crew of the Palomino dock with, that's orbiting the black hole, is called the Cygnus. Random facts.
I do love
I'm here
a
all
random fact. I do love a random fact. I do believe by the looks of it, we've got some people from the Herald Sun watching us now. So I've just seen our numbers absolutely skyrocket. For those who have just joined us, we are attempting through cloudy patches to live stream and live stack images, deep sky images. And this is a live image right now that has been taken by one of our astrophotographers up in Swan Hill. And this is the Saturn Nebula. Steve, you'd like to tell everybody a little bit about the Saturn Nebula?
Yeah, sure. Let me. I'm just opening up some, because this we're having to sort of hunt around a little bit with the cloud cover. So this is one that wasn't really on our list, but that's okay. We can cope.
It wasn't on our list, but it is now.
Yeah. So well, it's good that the image that you've got there, because it does look quite a lot like Saturn, doesn't it? That's the main thing, as though it's got rings around it. So this is actually another planetary nebula, NGC 7009, the Saturn Nebula, and it's 3,200 light years away in Aquarius. It's a pretty small object, so it's small. You remember we looked at the Ring Nebula and the Dumbbell Nebula. This is small, quite a bit smaller than the Ring Nebula. It's about 0.5 arc minutes across, and it's this object. It appears on quite a lot of favorite observing lists. So those of you who are familiar with Patrick Moore and his Caldwell list, this is Caldwell 55. It was seen first by William Herschel in 1782, but he didn't give it the name Saturn Nebula. That was given to it by a gentleman called Lord Rosse in 1850. For obvious reasons, as you can see in that image, it looks like Saturn. When you blow it up a little bit more, you see it to be much more like a planetary nebula, with the shells of gas blowing away from a central white dwarf star.
Stefan, do you have anything?
You can see that now.
Oh, look at that! Wow,
that's really good, isn't it?
It is. It's really good. I was just asking Stefan, has he got anything he'd like to add to that one?
Putting Stefan on the spot here a little bit.
I am absolutely putting him on the spot, because Stefan Nebula should know about the Saturn Nebula.
I'm intrigued by those two little blobs that you can see either side, which are the things that you can see as the rings of Saturn in the less focused image. They're fascinating.
The technical name for those are the ANSAE. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. ANSAE, ANSAE. That's the name given to the extremities of planetary rings. So, fun little factoid. But no, I don't have anything specific to say about the Saturn Nebula. But one thing I can say, if you're interested in imaging these planetary nebulae, as you can see, they're relatively bright as far as deep sky objects go, but they're typically relatively very small as well. We have a few large bright nebulae, like the Helix Nebula, the Dumbbell Nebula, which we just looked at, and the Ring Nebula to some extent. But quite a lot of them are quite small, like this Saturn Nebula. So it can be really hard to resolve much detail. One way that you can do this is a little bit counterintuitive if you're a regular astrophotographer. So most of the time when we image deep sky objects, we want to take really long exposures, 5-minute long sub-exposures, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however far you can push your equipment. But with these objects, you can actually really benefit from a particular type of imaging called lucky imaging, which is what planetary images do. Instead of taking long, minute sub-exposures, take a small video file with, with essentially a very fast frame rate. So you're taking a series of very short exposures, and the benefit of that is you then select through those frames and choose just the sharpest and stack those together, and you can start to bring out some really high resolution details. It's a technique that we use to beat the seeing, to cut through some of the disturbance of the atmosphere. So if you're an astro imager and you'd like to image some planetary nebulae, this is a really great technique to look into. It's something I've tried and gotten some really great results with. So yeah, think about it.
Just we're not looking, the other objects we've been looking up to the north. We've now shifted round to the east, and the Saturn Nebula sits in the constellation Aquarius, and it actually is pretty close to the planet Saturn at the moment as well. So it's just off to the left side of the ecliptic at the moment, the Saturn Nebula, and just within a few degrees of it's sort of sitting quite neatly between Saturn and Jupiter, just off to the side of the ecliptic. So it's quite an interesting part of the sky to look at the moment.
Now, I think Caleb's got some data on the next object, which is Pelican Nebula.
Yeah, Pelican and North American Nebula.
Pelican
would be on the right, and the Pelican on the right, and North American on the left.
So for those of you who aren't watching the football right now either, it looks like it's going to be a Melbourne Bulldogs grand final. Excitement, yay. Can hear everybody cheering. I can see Andy being excited in the background there. Okay, so guys, take it away. Tell us a little bit about the Pelican Nebula.
The nice thing in this image is that you can really see the head of the Pelican very, very obviously there with its big eye in the middle. I don't know, Caleb, can you just sort of put your mouse pointer around the eye of the Pelican and then coming down the beak? Are you able to do that? It's fairly obvious. It's in the center of the screen.
Yeah.
I can see it. Yes.
Yeah. So come across from the North American Nebula over to the nebulosity over on the right hand side. So a bit further over is that little black round blob is the eye, and then the beak comes down to the sort of lower left.
Yeah, I can see it there.
Yeah, and that dark bit is the
yes.
gap between the sort of the beak of the Pelican and the body, if you like. And then it goes up to the sort of the knobble on the back of the head of the Pelican. So it's pretty obvious. I hope everyone can see that.
Now, Steve, what is that called again?
This is the Pelican Nebula.
No. What is when you see the shape of something in an object?
Pareidolia.
Oh, the asterism, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, that one.
Yes, it's sort of an asterism. I'm not sure whether asterisms are particular to stars or whether they include sort of gas and cloud objects as well.
Oh, you can see it much better in the color image there, that color version.
The other is just a quick pareidolia.
Pareidolia.
So this is just a quick hydrogen, oxygen. So just a quick combination. Is not calibrated by any means. It's just like out of the life stack, put them together. Really rough. So I'm actually in the background still trying to plate solve through the clouds. But anyway, so this is a 4 exposures of 3 minutes each on hydrogen, and I think somewhere along like 15 or 16 exposure for 3 minutes each oxygen. And I guess I'll answer that question. What kind of telescope?
There you go. What kind of telescope are you using?
So, where's my OBS? There you are. So, that's my telescope. And you can see there's a lot of clouds. So, that's an Esprit 100 riding on a Skywatcher EQ6R. So, it's a 4-inch triplet refractor. Behind the telescope, so is the camera, or the imaging train. So I'm using the QHY268M. For those who uses the ZWO ecosystem, it is the equivalent for ZWO's 2600mm Pro. Behind that, in front of the camera is the filter wheel, which is the QHY filter wheel, large. In there, 7 filters, so all 2 inches filters. So we've got luminance, red, green, blue, hydrogen, alpha, oxygen 3, and sulfur 2. I also use, for those who do some astrophotography, probably be asking, where is my guide scope? The answer is I don't have one. I use an off-axis guider, which is, if I can point it right around here. So that's my off-axis guider. So that's pretty much it. 2 more things would be the autofocuser. I use a Primolusha Lab Sasto Sensor 2. I will probably swap it out to an Optec, I can't remember the model number, but an Optec direct drive one day. And a Pegasus Astro Pocket Power Box.
That's a lot. Hey,
It
I
is.
guess the good thing is, Caleb, with all of that fancy gear, those clouds are moving quite fast. You might be able to start using it again.
Yeah, I might be able to. I like how it actually just like Oh, yep, I'm guiding actually.
Oh, there you go. You're finding clear patches in the sky.
Whether we are on target is another matter because
That is another matter. So, did we have anything else to add to Pelican Nebula, or are we going to try and stall while we try and find another object?
There's also Anne-Marie said she's actually got an image of that. I'm just waiting for her to send it through.
Ah, thank you, Anne-Marie.
There's a couple of cool. There's a couple of cool little objects in the Pelican Nebula I'd like to point out. So if you can zoom into that image, Caleb, up into the Pelican Nebula, right at the sort of hump in the top right. So I'm not sure. Yeah, if you zoom in just a little bit more on that. Yeah, that'd be better. Yeah, so right on that hump. Yeah, beautiful. You can see them there. So the things that I'm trying to point out are these two sort of strands that are coming off that that hump, that almost mountain-looking structure. And these are actually particularly dense strands that are resulting from what we call Herbig-Haro objects. And there are actually 7 embedded Herbig-Haro objects within Pelican Nebula. And these are narrow jets of gas and matter that have been ejected from newly born stars that are ejecting material at speeds of several hundred kilometers per second. And as that material is ejected, it collides with nearby gas and dust, producing really bright shock fronts as they sort of heat some of the gas and dust that is surrounding. And this image that Caleb's got is quite a wide field image of the region, but if you use something with a bit more focal length and you take a really high resolution image of this region, you can actually see off those sort of tendrils really beautiful shock fronts propagating out at right angles. I think imaging things like that are really beautiful because you're seeing young solar systems in the making. But yeah, this is a fantastic, beautiful sort of wide view that we've got as well.
Oh look, we're on target. This is on running an autofocus, so keep going.
Yay, through clouds.
Just to explain to the viewers where we are, we've actually come back round to the north again, back to Cygnus, and the Pelican Nebula. As you saw, it was next to you can see the North America Nebula off to the left there. The Cygnus has some fantastic areas of emission nebula in them, and in fact, we'll be having a look at one or two more of them as the evening progresses, depending on what those clouds do that you can see on the lower right there in the picture of Caleb's telescope. We'll see how we go. So we're in Cygnus. We're actually reasonably close to the bright star Deneb, which is one of the stars in the northern hemisphere. Is it called the Summer Triangle, I think? And it's about 1,800 light years away.
So what object have we moved to now? I think we've moved to...
So this is the Crescent Nebula.
Ah, Crescent Nebula. I should have known that.
So NGC 6888, Crescent Nebula. Let me just quickly reduce the sub exposure to 60 seconds, so we're not waiting an eternity for a usable sub.
Yeah, you got a nice bit of clear sky there by the looks of it, Caleb.
Yeah,
Make the
just a
most of it.
touch. Yeah.
So
I've just
hoping the
finished up.
viewers.
Yeah,
Let's-
so we just finished up the autofocus run. Now it's taking the active exposure. So Crescent is pretty bright in the hydrogen alpha. So in the 10-second exposure, I can see some detail through cloud. So
Yeah.
we should be able to see quite a impressive looking nebula with a lot of well, not in a minute, but if we do a proper stack of like hours and hours, we'll probably be able to see the outer gas of Crescent Nebula in Cygnus. Is that right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
So we can just see it in that shot that you've got there as well, which is
Yeah, so
If
that's
your
a
eyes are
10-second
sharp.
shot of 10-second shot through hydrogen alpha at 20 degrees altitude. So I would guess I am losing. Yep, I've lost guiding.
we have to wait for that cloud to move along.
Now, I do know that Anne-Marie has some good images of the Crescent Nebula. In fact, what we could really have done with is to get Anne-Marie on the call at the moment to explain a little bit about what goes through her head when she's imaging the Crescent Nebula, but probably we shouldn't really. So
Don't put that pressure on her. She's probably just relaxing on the couch watching us make fools of ourselves at the moment. Waiting for the sky to clear so she can open the dome.
She said no way in the chat at the moment.
No, she doesn't wanna
She
come
has
on.
actually shared her Pelican though, which is what I've got on screen at the moment.
All right. Well, while Caleb tries to find some clear patch, let's throw that really nice, stunning image of Pelican up. Maybe if you can make that full screen for us, Lee, and then you really will hopefully be able to see the Pelican in there.
Whoop.
So for those watching at home, this is
big.
not a live stack. This is a pre-imaged object. Obviously, we're working between cloud patches. So when it's cloudy, we'll use some pre-imaged objects to show you some of the amazing work our astrophotographers do. This is by Anne-Marie McComb. This is one of her images. She's probably one of, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best astrophotographers the ASV has as a member. So I don't know which way is up with this. I suppose
I'm
it's
struggling with that
facing-
one.
Yeah, it's the opposite way up, isn't
It's
it?
the other way round. It's confusing us all.
Can I maybe if I save that
And rotate it.
and yeah, exactly. We'll dump it there. Give me just a moment.
You can tell we're professionals, eh?
And we'd never ad lib.
No, we don't ever ad lib. We always have it all fully scripted.
Right, so let's do this. Yep.
I'm still really struggling to see where we are.
Oh, I can see it now. Oh, yes.
Which
right
way?
hand side. Right hand side.
Yep.
There it is.
Well, that's the same
yes, yeah.
orientation.
So she's actually it's much more. It's a lot more than the Pelican Nebula. It's also got the North American Nebula in that. I'm with it now. Yeah, I was kind of looking for the bill of the Pelican. It's a much wider field view.
We'll zoom in
There
on the
we
Pelican,
go.
I think.
Do you know what's quite interesting there? Just I know a colleague of ours, Linda, loves to pick up on things that she sees, sort of asterisms, objects. I can see off to the left of the Pelican's sort of beacon eye. Can you see there's a sort of a little patch of nebulosity there? That looks to me like a bird looking at me with two eyes.
You can see what you want to see in these things. You can
Yeah,
pick-
it's great.
Those two eyes there.
Yeah, and then the nebulosity looks like a beak pointing towards me.
Is that the
Big there.
raven?
It's got a bit of it's got some puffy feathers on the head as well. It's kind of a
yeah.
it's like a cassowary. Excuse me, nearly.
There's only one cassowary in this room. It's like a raven, a rat tapping on the on the door.
Yeah.
Never
I
more,
certainly
never
agree
more.
with that comment. It's a stunning photo.
It is absolutely. Michelle's right. It's a stunning photo. As I said, Anne-Marie produces some of the best astrophotography work that personally I've seen. Anyway, I think she's one of the best astrophotographers the ASV has access to.
And there's those the HH streams there.
So we've just Linda is saying that it's a dragon looking at you, Steve. And I can kind of see a dragon in there as well. You can see quite a lot of you can see what you want really in there. Now, Lee, does Anne-Marie on her Astrobin, does she have an image of Crescent Nebula or?
Oh, I don't know.
I've actually seen that image. So she showed us on Messenger a few days ago. So I should probably have included it in the stack of images.
Because Caleb has wall-to-wall cloud, he said. So if any of the guys, I've just been speaking to one of our other astrophotographers, Jen, who's up at Swan Hill as well, asking if she's got clear skies, she can jump out there and start imaging some stuff. Maybe, I don't know, Michael, have you got clear skies at the moment up at Swan Hill?
Not Anne-Marie's, so.
He's on silent. He's not answering me. Well, that's what Lee's seeing in Ringwood at the moment. Nothing but cloud.
Mm-hmm.
While you go searching for it, I'll just bring Michael's screen up. Oh,
yep.
It was. Have you got clear skies
yeah,
up there,
that's
Michael?
all right. That's okay. No panic. Well, partly, yeah. I have been imaging. I've been imaging the Helix Nebula, so I'll throw that up for you.
I think Stefan and Steve
on the left-hand side is a 30-second.
No, Anne-Marie mentioned she hasn't done Crescent actually.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go with Helix because this is live data from tonight. So this has been taken by Michael, the Comic King, up in Swan Hill this evening while we've been chatting. This is fresh data from this evening of the Helix Nebula. And what did you say, Michael? The left-hand side is how long is that?
Basically, basically the left-hand side's a 30-second exposure. That's with a Canon 6D Mark I camera on a Celestron 11-inch raster. But the one on the right-hand side is data I've collected earlier. That's about a total 10-minute stack. So you can see the difference between a 30-second and a 10-minute.
Still pretty impressive for 30 seconds to see what you can see. To see that.
Yeah.
That's F2 for you.
Yeah.
It's not a particularly easy image to image as well because it's quite bright, but not bright because it's such a big object. But the object obviously on the right, you can see that helix structure, which you can't really see at the moment over on the left-hand side. But the colours are starting to appear there. So we've actually gone back over to the east again, and the Helix Nebula is not that far away from where we were looking at the Saturn Nebula earlier on. It's in the constellation Aquarius. So it's interesting because this object is quite a lot brighter at mag 7.6 than, say, the Saturn Nebula, which, if my memory serves me right, is around about magnitude 9 or 8.8 or 9 or something like that. But I think the Saturn Nebula is actually easier to see. I think Stefan was talking about this earlier on, that because most planetary nebulae are quite bright objects but very small. This is actually a planetary nebula again, but because it's relatively close to us, it's only 650 light years away. It's quite diffuse to look at. It's quite so. I know from visual observation, this is quite a difficult object to capture visually. It's because it's such a big object. What you tend to see is a bit of a grey, misty patch in the eyepiece, and that's about it, really. I think it's pretty obvious to see in the image on the right that this also is often referred to as the Eye of God. It's, as I say, it's a big object, 15 by 12 arc minutes, so that's half the size of the full moon. That's a big deep sky object.
It's very big. Now, I can see Stefan hiding in the background, and I can see he's got a screen that he wants to share, and I know why he wants to share it, because it's pretty bloody cool. We'll just chuck Stefan's on there. Stefan, tell us what you did.
Well, so I'll show you that in a moment, but just one more thing generally about the Helix Nebula. So as I was mentioning before when we were talking about other planetary nebulae, how I was saying that it's very common for planetary nebulae to have sort of outer shells that are much, much dimmer and that can be quite challenging to image. And this is an image that I'm currently working on of the Helix Nebula. At the moment, this image that you're seeing is around 10 hours of hydrogen alpha on an f2.8 telescope. So already quite a lot of data. And what I hope you can see is that you can obviously see the main bright structure that you can pull out in most images, but just up to the top left here is this sort of arc. And what I'll do is I'll bring up the brightness. And as I do so, you'll see those outer shells start to emerge. And even more so, if I keep going, so hopefully you can see that even further out on the edges here and down here, there's even more really diffuse shells, which, you know, this is over 10 hours of HA on a fast telescope. And even so, I've got quite a bit of noise. Like, these are really, really dim structures, but what I'm trying to do is really pull out everything that's really there. Another sort of interesting thing is if I bring the brightness down and we move closer to the core of the nebula, what you'll see, this core star here, this is the Progenitor Star. That's the name for the star that created this whole planetary nebula. But then sort of looking out into the disk, you see these sort of strands poking out radially away from the center of the nebula. And these are what we call Cometary Globules. They're essentially pieces of material, interstellar material, and the nucleus of which, so this thing I'm circling here, this is around the size of our entire solar system. And as material was ejected from this Progenitor Star, it's blowing away, it's photoionizing a lot of this material, causing these really beautiful streaks to sort of appear. So this is, again, an image I'm working on, so it's not quite finished. I've only got the HA. I'm going to be adding O3 and RGB for the stars. But then the next thing that I want to share, can you actually see my other screen at the moment?
No, you'll have to
No,
unshare
I'll
that
quickly,
one,
yep, I'll unshare and share the other one.
ugly mugs, and then we can reshare.
There we go. So you can see my VLC.
Oh,
Can you?
it's a cone. It's a cone at the moment, but yeah.
Yep, that's right. So I'm just about to play it. So what I'm working on with this image is actually, what I've done is, I'll just pause it. So this is my image here. And what I've done is I've extracted all of the cataloged identities for the stars in the image. So I've plate solved the image and extracted their catalog IDs and searched information about the stars within the image, specifically their parallax. And given their parallax, you can discern their distance. And so I've used their calculated distances as a sort of three-dimensional offset in a 3D rendering software. And doing so, I can sort of render their positions as they really are relative to the nebula. So this is something that I'm working on. I'm really excited about. And I think once I've finished the image and sort of polished off the animation, it's going to be quite a beautiful, beautiful little thing.
It already is beautiful. It's already seriously stunning.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I can't wait to see the final product.
Yeah.
Well, looking forward to it as well. Now, as awesome as that is, we have, this is Anne-Marie's version, is it?
Yes.
Yep, of the Helix Nebula, and that does look a lot like an eye, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think even with the, if you think about your iris and the way you have those lines kind of going out from the center, it's just amazing, really. And that fits with what Stefan was telling us about those the objects within the helix.
Yeah, and you can see just the outer edge of that dust rim as well. Right towards the edge. Now
the furrows.
Yeah, the furrows. Yes. Now Andy has left his dome, but he's got his version, which he tells me. Oh, he's back. Andy, you can tell us about this one now. It's your turn to tell us what you've got an image of.
Yeah, this is about 13 hours of the helix with my old DSLR. It's probably about as far as I can get it, I think. It is pretty faint, and I reckon even if I went to 20 hours, it's not going to change much unless I started doing HA. But yeah, this was over multiple nights, about 6 months apart. So yeah.
It's a pretty impressive image for a digital camera attached
to a
telescope.
It's not too bad. I mean, when I'm looking at, I can start to see some of the iris stuff sort of through here. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. But because you can start to see the stars are just a bit blown out. I haven't done any star reduction, which would probably help for this. And some HA data over the top, which I haven't done any HA. This is just straight RGB. So I've just got
this is just straight red, green, blue, nothing fancy added to it. Now, I'm trying to look at what Michael's got on his screen and work out of our list what it is. I'm going to bring it up anyway because it's time to move to another object. And this is
pearls.
55.
Yeah, String of Pearls Galaxy. Now, Michael, when did you image this? Is this from this evening? This is not from this evening.
No, I'm clouded out now, mate.
You're clouded out as well.
If you can have a look on the top left-hand side, we got 2020 October the 12th.
Okay, so String of Pearls. Stefan and Steve, take it away. Tell us a little bit about String of Pearls. It's not an image from tonight, but it looks like everywhere is clouded out, even Caleb.
Even I have literally the whole week clear, and only for like the last hour been clouded.
It's clouded
out.
up.
I have not seen a single piece of cloud for a whole week.
It's because we're doing a live stream. It's just like, cloud.
Yeah.
But that's right. We'll use some old data, and these are essentially stacked anyway. So
I'm never going to trust cloud-free night ever again.
No,
it was completely blue.
Yeah. It's lying to us. It says it's clear outside, but it's not. All right, Stefan, take it away, guys. So
I do some basic info about this galaxy, and then I'll leave it to Stefan to talk about more of the galaxy detail, if you like. So this is NGC 55, also known as the String of Pearls Galaxy. It's about 70,000 light years across. And it's fairly close. It's 5.4 million light years away in the constellation Sculptor. So this is one of the closer galaxies to us. It sits just beyond the local group. They used to think that NGC 55 was part of the Sculptor group, of which NGC 253, the Sculptor Galaxy, is probably the most well-known. But they now think that NGC 55 and its near neighbour NGC 300, which is also maybe on our list tonight. We'll see how we go. That they sit in the foreground of the Sculptor group of galaxies. So there's sort of, are they part of our local group or are they part of the Sculptor Galaxy? They sort of sit somewhere in the middle. So it's as we see it, it's nearly an edge-on galaxy, but you can see it's fairly asymmetrical. And I might leave it to Stefan to talk a little bit more about that. There's some thought that it's actually quite similar in its sort of structure to the LMC, the Large Magellanic Cloud, which is one of the small galaxies that's very close to the Milky Way galaxy, where the LMC is more face on and this is sort of edge on. But Stefan, do you want to talk a bit more detail about the structure of the galaxy?
Yeah, sure. I guess I can say a little bit. So, as you said, it's got a bit of a peculiar morphology. Morphology is another word for its geometry, its overall shape. It's what we call an irregular barred spiral galaxy. So, because we're seeing it sort of edge on, it can be a bit more difficult to discern its overall structure. But like you mentioned, Steve, it's thought to have a sort of similar morphology to the Large Magellanic Cloud, which orbits our own Milky Way. So it's thought to contain a main bar with then some disturbed structure on the outside. And this is likely a result of some galactic merger at some point in its history. Another piece of evidence suggesting that it may have undergone some merger or some interaction is that it's quite active with star formation. You can just about make out in the plane of this image, right towards the middle of it, there's a little bit of sort of a hint of pinkish. If you image this galaxy with a hydrogen alpha filter, you'll be able to pick up a lot more of that. But those little pink specks embedded within it are regions of essentially emission nebulae within that galaxy, regions of high active star formation. So certainly it looks like this galaxy has been disturbed at some point in its past. I've never really... some celestial objects I can sort of visualize their overall shape, but this is one which I really just sort of struggle with. I can't really see much structure in it, but even so, it's quite a beautiful galaxy, even in its irregularity. I think this is the first galaxy we've looked at tonight. I always think that it's important to point out the inherent beauty of looking at another galaxy. Right, what we're looking at here is the combined glow of hundreds of millions, if not billions, or even in some case trillions of stars. Each one of these stars a sun just like our own, potentially with its own planetary system, and who knows, maybe life. Possibly there's a life form on a planet in a star in this galaxy looking back on us and trying to understand the morphology of our galaxy. Who knows?
That was very well said. Very well said. Sorry, Steve, before you jump in, Anne-Marie has joined us, and this is her image. So I'll let you say what you're going to say, Steve, and then when you're done, Anne-Marie, if you'd like to, once Steve finishes, just tell us a bit about the process you went through to take this image. And Gary is spot on. We should have paid our weather bill on time, guys. If someone wants to go to the BOM and put the ASV's credit card details into weather.scam.com.ng, we might get some clear skies.
Excellent. I love it. This is just from a visual point of view, this is it's a beautiful object to look at visually through a medium-sized telescope. I have a 10-inch Dobsonian. And it's good. It almost looks as though it's, when you look at it visually, you can't see the color obviously, but it kind of looks as though it's sort of two galaxies that have been combined together, and it's just weird the way it looks. But through the 40-inch telescope at the LMDSS, you can start to see some of that structure that you can see in this image here. Again, only in black and white, but you can certainly see that bright central, off to the right blob, and you can also see the bluish blob over to the left-hand side as well, at the far left, visually through a 10-inch telescope. It's a really nice object to look at. Anne-Marie, tell us about the image.
Hello, everybody. This is one that I took actually last year, and it's just through my 10-inch reflector on my Skywatcher EQ6R, and yeah, it's about 6 hours worth. And I started out doing this one in LRGB, and then decided to add the HA at the end, and just to see what would come out. So I was quite happy with it, but maybe do it again one day.
One day.
Yeah, I know this is the Whale Nebula, or the Whale Galaxy, sorry. So, I didn't realise it was a string of pearls.
Yes. I see the whale. Yes, I understand that.
Yeah, sperm whale, I think. The head down this end. Oh, hang on. Down that end.
You really can see whatever you want to see in an object.
Good old
can't
Moby
you?
Dick.
So, Anne-Marie, the HA filters, which parts of the galaxy does that sort of bring out more? Is it the blue bits or the pink bits?
No, the pink bits. Yeah.
The pink bits.
All the
Is
pink
that
bits
why
and
the
the
pink bits are very pronounced?
I'm sorry?
Is that why the pink bits are very pronounced? Because you've included quite a lot of HA?
Yeah, definitely. I think the one that we were looking at before, the one that was in mono, I think that looks more like string of pearls because it is in black and white and it doesn't have the red. So whoever's that was that we were looking at before, I could definitely see the string of pearl in that one.
Mm. I know that we've got Caleb and Michael, I think, have both got the Sculptor Galaxy for us to have a look at, which is sort of it's a close relative and is a galaxy that has a lot of star forming going on within it. Wow.
Oh, wow, look at that.
So this is actually with
And that's only 10-minute photo.
So yours is 10 minutes. How long is yours, Caleb?
1 second, I need to look it up. I can't remember.
It's more than 1 second. God,
It's
don't
five. It's just under 6 hours.
Okay, so for the viewers at home, that's 10 minutes exposure of was it Sculptor, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Sculptor.
that is how many hours? 5 hours, did you say?
5 hours and 52 minutes.
5 hours, so 6 hours of Sculptor
6 hours.
Galaxy. The level of detail is amazing in the difference. I mean, the 10-minute one is beautiful. This 6-hour one is simply stunning. And I can see that we've got Anne-Marie's up as well. I'll save that one for later on if I can. We do have a question. When you say hours of picture, does that mean this image has been captured over about that hours? Would it look like this at a glimpse of it? It wouldn't look like this at a glimpse of it, would it, Steve? It would probably...
No, not at all. So it would look, if you go back to that sort of monochrome, so in a medium-sized telescope, you won't see any colour at all, but you would see some of the structure that you can see here. It wouldn't be as bright as this. So in my 10-inch telescope, the NGC 253, the Sculptor Galaxy, looks like a sort of a long cigar, a misty patch of a cigar, and you can see some of the structure in it as well. It's because it's fairly close to us. It's a big object, so it fills the eyepiece. Whereas, most galaxies that we look at, because they're so far away, they're quite small objects. The Sculptor Galaxy is pretty close to us. It's about 11 million light years away. So similar kind of distance to the NGC 55 that we were looking at before, the String of Pearls Galaxy or the Whale Galaxy. Yeah, so that would be a closer approximation to what you would see through visually through a telescope, but not as bright as that.
That's a beautiful description. I'm going to go back to this one. Actually, I'm going to jump across to Andy's. So this is Andy's, which is 60 minutes of Sculptor. Okay, so just before, Andy, before you say anything, I just want to, so we've got 10 minutes, obviously different equipment. We've got an hour, and so you can start to see more detail in there. And then we've got essentially
6
6
hours.
hours. And I think Lee, you've got one here. How long's this?
That's just 1 minute.
1 minute. There we go.
So
So
that
one,
so you're asking.
leave that there for a second. So 1 minute.
Yeah.
That's probably more what it would look like, isn't it, Steve? Visually,
Yes.
Maybe
So you can see the cigar shape. It would probably be a little bit more than that, but you can start to see the structure. So I can see the core of the galaxy, and I can see some of the star-forming areas in the galaxy. So the Sculptor Galaxy is what's called a starburst galaxy because it's undergoing a period of intense star formation at this point in time.
Now, this is clearly Anne Marie's image, is it?
No,
Lee?
that's my
yours?
one.
Oh, that's yours. It's
So
too good to be
that's
yours.
so I did these ones in color, all just with the IR filter. So that's the 1 minute, and then when processed, I think that's only about an hour.
So it's about an hour. So 10 minutes. Yeah, that's an hour from Andy's, and that's an hour from yours. Do you have one? Emery, do you have one of these? Do you have an image, a version of this that we can share? Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I've given them to Lee. I've only got one. My laptop on. I'm not sure.
Okay,
if I can
hang on. Hang on. Where did we put those?
Sorry, I wasn't expecting to be on, so I didn't put the other screen on.
Here we go.
Okay, so how long is this one?
It's an hour and 2 minutes.
Oh. Okay, so this is where equipment comes into it, doesn't it?
Yeah, so
Caleb, can you
is
put
that
yours
with
back up?
1600?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So that's 6 hours.
6 hours
And
with
that's-
OSC
Yeah, and that's
versus 1 hour with monochrome.
and that's
The thing that I find interesting was this. You'll see that I've actually flipped my image because it's a bit of an optical illusion. This one, you can't really tell which way's up.
there we go, fixed.
Yeah, but it just whichever way you look at it, it's like I'm not quite sure which way's up.
I don't know where I'm up to now. Which way around was it?
No,
Yeah.
you put it back in the original spot. No, you're going back the wrong way now. You've been
That's the original.
Upside down to me.
So
It does.
Robin
Yeah.
is asking 6 hours doing what? So
Just-
6 hours of Lee. Stop the 6 hours of exposures of using camera equipment attached to telescopes. It could be. So, Emery, how long were each of your exposures that you took?
This is a LRGB would be 2 minutes.
So 2 minutes, but it's 6
and-
hours total.
Oh, sorry, there's no luminance in there. It's just RGB.
So red, green, blue, 2
Yep.
minute exposures for a total of 1 hour.
1 hour and 2
total.
minutes.
1 hour and 2 minutes total of red, green, blue combined. And Caleb, yours is 6 hours. And how long is each exposure?
A little bit complicated. So it is 59 times 3 minutes band of lights.
Yep.
Then 35 times 5 minutes with a HA and O3 filter. So
Okay,
that's
yours is-
taken with a one-shot color camera. Actually, let me just quickly dig out why I have to do this wizardry, because the broadband data is simply not usable as is because of like pollutions and whatnot. If I find it.
Oh, what am I doing? Sorry, I'm hitting the wrong button.
Will be here.
Glad you're enjoying it, Jody. Any more? If you've got more questions, you can ask away. That's for sure.
Just for Roberto's benefit, perhaps one thing that you didn't explain is that you're taking images that are sort of 2 or 3 minutes, and then you stack them together to build up the quality of the light, if you like, in each of the images. So, you know, each image that you take is, say, a 3-minute image, but then you stack them all together to give you perhaps 3 or 4 hours worth of photons coming onto the sensor on the camera. Does Roberto? Hopefully, that explains it a little bit more about what happens over the 6 hours, if you like.
Now,
So this is the what's 59 times 3?
59 times 3.
177. So just shy of 3 hours, basically, of broadband. So as you can see, there are gradients everywhere. If I stretch it even further, like this is overstretched, but just to prove a point, I'm getting gradients everywhere on the target because I'm shooting right next to an apartment block that's shining lights at me. So
just knock it down.
yeah, so that's why I've added my hydrogen alpha and oxygen free. So actually, I've inverted the image. So I like how you've pointed out which way is up. So
There is no up
see-
in space.
well, there's no up in space, but which way is closer to us? So this edge is actually clearer than the other side. So I will assume this side is actually closer to us.
And one quick
which
fact,
way up?
if I can just butt in here, this point that you've actually brought up is quite interesting. That the side on the bottom left hand is closer to us. When we take into account the size of these galaxies, in that the disk's diameter is for this galaxy probably around 100,000 light years, that means that the closer edge is around 100,000 light years closer to us than the back edge, meaning that the light at the front of the galaxy in this image is 100,000 years younger than the light coming from the back of the image. So, really interesting thing that I read about a while ago and never really thought about it that way. But yeah,
That's an interesting.
Interesting.
What I've noticed with the images that we've been showing, as you build up the more exposures, you can actually see the spiraling effect of the galaxy more as there are more and more images. On the, just where you've got a few minutes worth, it looks a bit like a sort of a cigar. But then after an hour, you can see more structure. But then the image that was a few hours, you can actually clearly see that there's a spiral structure across that one there. I think is the one that, to me, it has a much clearer spiral structure.
Now, Robert, just in answer to your question, Caleb ran through his equipment earlier in the stream, and each of the astrophotographers for their images use completely different equipment. What we might be able to do is pop into the chat later on the equipment that they do use. Yeah, if we could, maybe we might pop it in the chat for you to have a look at. The ever sneaky Sam Spade has asked if we could look at NGC 288, a globular cluster about 1.5 degrees away. Sam, it's cloud. It's not, and I know it's not Sam, but that's all right. I'll pretend that I don't know who you are. It's cloudy outside everywhere at the moment, so we won't be able to see it. So unless somebody has imaged NGC 288, I'll have to say no. But if this is a shout out to our astrophotographers. If you've imaged this object, let me know, and we will bring it up just for Sam, just to keep him happy.
I've got archive footage if you want it.
Yeah, why not? Let's do it while we. Oh, here we go. I'm putting everybody on the spot now.
You ask, we deliver.
There we go. So, Michael, do you know a little bit about NGC 288?
Not a lot. It's a globular cluster.
I can tell you some of the basic stats.
Let's just go
basic
through
statistics.
Yeah.
So it's 29,000 light years away. So it's one of the sort of middle distance globular clusters. It as was pointed, because it's very close to 253. It's in the constellation Sculptor. It's 13 arc minutes in diameter, so it's a reasonably big object, as you know, most of the middle distance globular clusters are going to be. I'm just looking to see if because I just sort of flicked to this in Sky Safari, see if it gives us an idea of how many stars there are in it.
Lots.
Lots, yeah.
Lots.
Typically, as we know with globular clusters, there are lots of stars in there. I would probably say it's going to be something like 50 to 100,000 stars, something like that. I would guesstimate. Stefan, any more details?
We've thrown
On
the
the
rule
spot
book
again?
out tonight. When the clouds come in, we just go off on a cuff.
This is the ad-libbing bit.
This is the ad-libbing bit. This is what you've got to do. Sometimes it gets cloudy and you've just got to roll with the punches. Oh, no. Put that one back.
That's 300, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got to go back to where we were. We haven't finished yet. We've put Stefan on the spot. You're giving him a chance to get prepped.
Oh, here I was thinking I got away with it.
Not while I'm around, you don't.
Keep talking, and I'll get the professor going.
Oh boy. No, so I guess one thing that I can sort of say, it's a bit of a joke between astrophotographers is that, once you've imaged one globular cluster, you've sort of imaged them all. And, to a degree, that is kind of accurate. A lot of them do have a very similar appearance. There are some outstanding ones here and there, but the large collection of them do look fairly similar. But I think that even though us astrophotographers tend to overlook these objects, I still think they're one of the most beautiful things out there, especially visually. Just seeing it through the telescope and actually being able to resolve all of these stars, it's just incredible. And really, again, I'll bring up this point that the images that we're showing are just snapshots. You have to imagine these objects as they really are. Three-dimensional, dynamic systems, these chaotic collections of, hundreds of thousands of stars in just, orbiting in and out of the middle of the cluster themselves, buzzing around like a beehive just gone crazy. Like, it's such a fantastic object, globular clusters. I really, they're one of my favorites, even though I do sort of brush them off a little bit.
Stefan, I completely agree with you. I think, I was talking about my top 5 objects, and the Ring Nebula being one of them, the Tarantula Nebula probably being another one. But then I think the two big globular clusters, Omega Centauri and 47 Tucana, are probably then also within my top 5. And they're, as you say, they're beautiful visual objects. They're great to look at. The joy of them as well is that you can see them in medium light polluted skies reasonably well through a small Dobsonian. I really like globular clusters. So I failed miserably though while you were talking there. I was Professor Google failed to tell me how many stars there are in this object. I'd guess at sort of 50 to 100,000.
It's not a bad guess. I think you're right. I don't know if you are or not, but
I could be a bit low. I could be a bit low on that.
All right, I think we'll move along to NGC 300.
Yeah, coming back to our theme now, which is this is another of the...
Did we have a theme?
Yeah, of the galaxies in we did. The cloud cover gave us a bit of a theme, which was to have a look at some of the galaxies in Sculptor. And this is, do you remember I was talking about NGC 55? And the NGC 55 sort of sits, they now think, isn't in the Sculptor group. It sits somewhere between the Sculptor group and our local group. Well, NGC 300, which is what this object is its buddy. But the nice thing is
to interrupt. I don't think we're looking at an image of NGC 300.
I think we are.
This is M83.
Sorry. Okay.
There we go.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
Andy.
Yeah, well,
Mr. Prime Minister.
Thanks, Stefan.
When someone says the Southern Nebula Galaxy, I immediately pull out
That's
Sorry about
right.
that.
There's two of them.
Trying to trick us. At least one of us was paying attention. Thanks, Steph.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. Sorry about that.
I was so busy reading my notes there.
Yeah, Steve was just on a roll. All right, continue on,
What's on
guys.
the roll there?
Continue on.
Shall I carry on with the roll now? We've got the
Yes.
right picture up. Oh, dear. So thinking is that NGC 300, which is this object, is about 6 million light years away. So similar kind of distance to the String of Pearls galaxy, which was that sort of odd-shaped galaxy we were looking at before, which is about 5.4 million light years away. The difference, obviously, what's really nice is that we get to see an edge-on galaxy and then a face-on spiral galaxy, which is what this is. NGC 300 apparently, according to my notes, is one of the brightest of the main spirals in the Sculptor group. In terms of diameter, it's a bit smaller than the Milky Way galaxy. The thinking is it's something approaching 100,000 light years across. I think the Milky Way galaxy is perhaps twice that, 1.5 to twice that. Stefan, I bet you've got some details here.
Yeah, just a little bit. So, as you can see, there's a whole lot of bunches of these pink emission nebulae in this galaxy that I was talking about with the Whale galaxy earlier on. And that indicates to us that this is a really active galaxy. There's a lot of star formation going on. A few indicators of that are obviously the number of emission nebulae. Those are the star-forming regions. In addition, a lot of the stars are young and blue, so you can sort of see that in the spiral arms. There's a lot of those young blue hot stars, and then in towards the core, they're more the sort of yellowish, orangish, older stars. And in addition, there are a whole host of other sort of smoking gun pieces of evidence that there is a lot of star formation in this galaxy. There are a number of what's called optical transients, which are sort of like supernovae, but not exactly, but there's still evidence that there's a lot of birth and a lot of violent death going on within this galaxy. And actually, in 2008, there was a really interesting spectroscopic analysis using the Very Large Telescope, which detected a particularly interesting and exotic pair between a stellar mass black hole and a Wolf-Rayet star. A Wolf-Rayet star is essentially a very high mass star which is destined to blow up as a supernova. And these two are each about 20 solar masses, the black hole and the Wolf-Rayet star. And the Wolf-Rayet star orbits with a period of around 30 hours. So, just think that our planet, Earth, orbits around the sun. That whole orbit takes 365 days, 1 year. But this gigantic star is orbiting this black hole in just 30 hours. Pretty incredible. And yeah, just one of the very, very interesting things you can find in these extremely active galaxies.
There we go. Now, Anne-Marie, this is your image. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the beauty that is this image? Because it's stunning, all those lovely pink pops of colour. Yep, that's the hydrogen alpha again. So this one's just done with LRGB. And then I added, it's 3 hours and 40 minutes in total. And I added 18 4-minute exposures of HA in there as well. And that brings out all the beautiful pink in there. It's actually a difficult, it's not the easiest galaxy to photograph. It's quite faint. It's a beautiful image, though, that you've got. Thanks. Quite stunning. Now, what is our next object, guys? What are we moving to next? I think we're nearly. I think there's 3 left that we need to have a look at if anybody's got images of them. We've got Groose Quartet, Skull Nebula, and Robin's Egg. And that might
I
close
don't
us
want
out.
to speak
I don't-
too soon.
Don't
but
speak
I
too
do
soon.
have a
Don't
clear patch.
not spoil us.
I am
What are you doing,
focusing at
Caleb?
the moment. Veil complex.
Is it clear? Is it?
I'll have a patch.
Well, while you have a patch, let's have a look at
Let me
Groose
actually-
Quartet, shall we?
yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Now, Steve, take it away. This is Michael's image of Groose Quartet.
I guess I can start us off. So, as you can see, as you can probably understand, it's called the Groose Quartet for a reason. Quartet meaning 4. There are 4 major galaxies within this cluster, and they're actually interacting galaxies. The galaxy sort of towards the middle and the galaxy towards the right actually share a tidal stream of hydrogen gas that flows between them. That's far too faint, probably to be imaged with amateur equipment, but's been detected by professional astronomers. And this whole cluster lies around 60 to 70 million light years away in the constellation Groose. So the individual designators of these galaxies, to the bottom right-hand corner is NGC 7552. Towards the middle is NGC 7582. And then the top 2 are NGC 7590 and 7599. And 7582, the one sort of in the middle left of the image, is actually a really quite interesting galaxy. So they're all, as you can probably slightly tell, they're all spiral galaxies. They all have some spiral structure, and most of them are barred spiral galaxies. But NGC 7582, the one towards the middle, is a Type 2 Cepheid galaxy, meaning that it has an incredibly bright and active central supermassive black hole, which is similar to a quasar. It's actively feeding. And the black hole of this galaxy has been estimated to have a mass around 10 million solar masses. So a real monster. And you wouldn't pick it by looking at a sort of serene image like this.
I love the bottom right one, which is 7552. That sort of face-on barred spiral is really nice. Visually, the challenge with the Groose Quartet is to choose an eyepiece which gives you enough magnification that you can see the galaxies pretty well, and a low enough magnification or a sufficient sort of field of view that you can capture all of the 4. The 3 at the top left are easy. It's picking an eyepiece that brings in the lower right item. That's the challenge, really. So it's going to be quite a challenge with, say, our 40-inch telescope, which has quite a narrow field of view, even with a sort of fairly wide field eyepiece, an ethos eyepiece. I can, with my 10 and my 12-inch Dobsonian, I can capture the 4 galaxies in the same field of view, but they're kind of out to the edges. It's a nice challenge, and I love the Groose Quartet. Probably not in my top 5. But probably in my top 10.
So most of the astrophotographers at the ASV call it the Groose triplet.
Yeah.
They can't be bothered to take a wider field view and get all 4 in. They're going to come for me now.
Girls, get my quartet.
Yeah, they're going to come for me now because I've said that.
But look what they're missing. I think that lower right object is so beautiful.
It's like it's doing a 12 for us.
Yeah.
It is the best of the four by far. Yeah, absolutely. Now, next object, second last one. If someone's got an image of Skull Nebula, while Caleb pretends that he's not imaging because it's not clear. Is it, Caleb?
I've also got Anne-Marie's Witch's Broom and Eastern Vale.
Oh, we might come to those. We'll get through this side. We'll save Robin's eggs for last. I'm sure someone's got it. I know Stefan's got an image of it. I'm sure he does.
That's 6164, isn't it?
Robin's Egg
Oh,
Nebula. I'm dobbing Stefan in, and I probably don't even know if he has got one of those images.
1360.
No, I don't.
No, I'm thinking of the egg with the dragons of Aras. Sorry.
Yes.
Too many eggs. Okay, so this is Skull Nebula. Now, before we talk about this, Michael, how long is this exposure of Skull Nebula?
Oh, geez, I don't spend hours and hours. I only got 10 minutes tops, mate.
10 minutes.
I go for quantity. I go for quantity, not quality.
Yeah.
Images nebulas between searching for comets.
That's it. That's the way.
Well, that's why he's the Comet King. Stefan, Steve, Terminator, take it away, boys. Tell us a little bit about this one.
So I do some basic stuff. So this is
leave all the hard stuff for Stefan.
I know. I have to do that. I love it when we get Stefan into some of the detail. It's just wonderful.
And somehow it's always the targets which I have the least notes about.
You still do it well.
Hey, well, here we go on. I don't have a lot of notes on the Skull Nebula, but it's in the constellation Cetus. So this is one of the objects that were over to the east, I think, roughly 1,600 light years away. It's a planetary nebula. The central star, which I'm thinking is the bright star in the middle there, is 12th magnitude, so it's fairly bright. Apparently, the Skull Nebula is also known as the Pac-Man Nebula, but I'm not sure quite why. I was wondering whether at the top of the sphere there, whether there's a sort of a wedge cut out like the mouth of Pac-Man.
Yeah.
But I'm not
I reckon
sure.
if you turn it, if you rotate 90 degrees
It would
clockwise,
look like Pac-Man.
or even
and he's just
anti-clockwise for that matter.
And maybe it's because he's eating the stars.
He's eating the stars.
Fits
And
into our
I
theme.
wore my t-shirt last night, not tonight. I should have worn it tonight.
There you go, Stefan. We've kept that at a fairly low level for you to come in and
I wonder how close it is to Ghost of Jupiter then.
Oh, I get it.
You need to have like the Strawberry Nebula in between, so you can eat the Strawberry Nebula. That way you can eat Jupiter and have the Ghost of Jupiter. That's an astronomy joke if ever I've heard one.
God.
Take it away, Stefan.
Yeah,
Bring us up a level, Stefan.
Yeah, I'll try. So this is as we mentioned, this is another planetary nebula, but it's a much more dim planetary nebula, and I'm not 100% certain. I couldn't find that much information about this, of course, but I suspect that it's a bit of an older planetary nebula. As we were discussing earlier, more generally about planetary nebulae, as you know, as they start to lose their outer layers, these stars, this process is quite rapid, right? It only takes tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years at most. And so the outer layers are sort of rapidly dispersed out into space, and they quite rapidly lose their brightness. And so there are actually quite a few planetary nebulae which are larger than the ones we were looking at before, the Helix Nebula and the Dumbbell Nebula. But a lot of these are very, very dim. They have a very low surface brightness. And so not many people even know about them. But they are some, spectacular images with beautiful spherical symmetry. But so as you can see here, it's quite a dim nebula, and it's sort of easy to think of it as a small thing. But really, the extent of the sphere that we're looking at here is around 2.5 light years. So essentially, its diameter reaches from our sun halfway to the nearest star over. So it is an incredibly large structure that we're seeing. And the remnant of the star that birthed this planetary nebula will likely become a white dwarf, which is essentially the core of that sort of around solar mass star. And these white dwarfs are actually really stable objects. And it's thought that white dwarfs can live around 3 billion years in total. And eventually, once white dwarfs have exhausted even their fuel, they will slowly just sort of dim until they're no longer emitting in the visible wavelengths, and will become an object which we will call a black dwarf. But given how long white dwarfs are stable for, the universe hasn't even been around long enough for any of these black dwarfs to have formed. But when we sort of extrapolate out into the distant future of the universe, it's thought that all of the large stars, all of the blue supermassive giant stars that have long died away, all of the even roughly solar mass stars will have sort of burnt away and fizzled away and left only white dwarfs. And eventually those white dwarfs will dim even further and become black dwarfs until we'll reach a point essentially where the universe will start to go dark. All, star formation will have ceased, and really all that will remain are sort of the slowly fizzling cores of these really long-living stars. But it's not all bleak. This will happen many hundreds of billions of years in the future. Maybe not hundreds of billions, but a long time, much longer than we'll need to worry about.
I've just found a couple of other interesting things, Stefan, just using the professor. Apparently the central star, the progenitor, I think you call it, is actually a binary. And also, and coming back to your thing about these things sort of dying, if you like, apparently when this object was photographed in 1930, the magnitude of the central star, the Progenitor Star, was 9th magnitude. And now, what are we, 90 years later, it's now 12th magnitude. So it's dimmed by 3 magnitudes in less than 100 years.
Wow. So if it continues at that rate, it's going to start getting a lot harder to see.
Mm.
Yeah. Now, side note, while we get ready for Robin's Egg, if somebody has Robin's Egg, all objects are observable at the restaurant at the end of the universe. Well played, Mr. Martin. Very good.
We did that stream a few weeks ago, and only today, Kate, my wife, was watching Hitchhiker's Guide this afternoon in the middle of the instrument making stream.
So instead of watching instrument making, she was watching the other live stream.
No. She was watching the movie.
Oh, the movie. Oh, clearly, neither of our live streams were good enough for her. So what have we got here? This is Robin's Egg. There is one more to come to after that. I know Caleb has got a live stack that we're going to jump across to, and we've got one other object. So we've got 3 objects left, and that is it. We will be done after these 3 objects. Everyone can go home.
There's a bit of a segue here, because the central star in Robin's Egg is also a binary system. So that fairly bright blob in the middle there is actually a binary.
So Robin's Egg has twins.
What we can't see is the beautiful blue color of Robin's egg.
I don't know if anyone else has got an image of Robin's egg that we can have a look at, though. So I think we're kind of stuck because we can't live stack it, which is unfortunate. So we have to go with this version for now. And if you have any other information on it, Steve or Stefan, did you want to jump in about Robin's egg?
I've got a bit of basic stuff, and then I'll hand over to.
You're going to do the base, and you're going to put him in the. He's going to get.
Not wishing to put you on the spot here again.
He's going to get sick of you eventually.
I'll snaffle all the basic stuff. That's I'll do the easy bit. Sorry. We'll lump him with some hard stuff without him realizing one day. Nice. When we get those tricky questions coming in. So this object, the Robin's Egg Nebula, it's another planetary nebula, and this lies in the constellation Fornax, about 1,500 light years away. And the span of it is about 3 light years across. I mentioned earlier on that the central star is a binary star, which, according to my notes, it's 2 evolved white dwarf stars, less massive but much hotter than the sun. And that blue-green color is it's an emission produced as and I'm referring to my notes here, apologies, as electrons recombine with doubly ionized oxygen atoms, which I think is what gives it that blue color. Stefan, put me right.
No, that's absolutely right what you said. I think the only other thing that I can sort of point out about this planetary nebula is its sort of slightly unusual geometry, its morphology. So as I was saying with some of the previous planetary nebulae that we were looking at, typically planetary nebulae have some type of symmetry, whether that's spherical symmetry or some bipolar structure. But this object got a bit of an unusual shape. It's what we call a prolate spheroid, so basically just a fancy way of saying a football shaped. And with that, it's also fairly amorphous, so it doesn't have any real, internal structure. It's just sort of a big blob in the shape of a football, and this is kind of atypical for planetary nebulae. And the explanation for this is what Steve was talking about, the fact that the central star, the Progenitor Star, is actually in a binary system. And the hypothesis is, as far as I understand it, that this binary system is actually disturbing the release of the nebula itself and creating this sort of atypical morphology.
All right, I think that's me back again now, is it? We've covered off as much as we can on Robin's egg. I think we might jump quickly to Caleb.
So this is a single exposure, 2 minutes exposure of with oxygen free of the eastern veil and Pigring's triangle,
which we can just make out
between the clouds. So
between
that's
the clouds.
eastern veil, and that's the Pigring's triangle.
Wow.
So I am kind of glad I actually did O3 by accident. I didn't actually set up that sequence correctly because I was like, hang on, I should be on hydrogen alpha, but I'm glad I got stuck on oxygen 3. So veil is actually slightly more oxygen rich than hydrogen in terms of imaging and emission, I believe, if I recall. Much like, what's the other one? The Pencil Nebula, which is basically the equivalent in the Southern Hemisphere. It is very oxygen rich, and the hydrogen is significantly dimmer than the oxygen, which is not something that you will see very often. But yeah, so we can see the Eastern Veil on the left and the Pickering's Triangle on the right. And unfortunately, I won't be able to show you the Western Veil, which would be around down, which will be where my scope is on the screen, relatively. So that's a single exposure about 10-15 minutes ago.
And here's one we prepared earlier, courtesy of Anne-Marie.
Oh, that's nice.
Take it away, Anne-Marie. Tell us a little bit about this one, your version of it, which is
can you
not a
flip
single exposure.
Lee, can you flip it?
I flipped it to match what Caleb had on the screen.
My daughter thinks it looks like a horse head.
Oh,
I can see it.
yes. Wow, we're seeing lots of things in these images now, aren't we?
Now that one was taken with my my big scope, and I wasn't on that one, so let me just find that one.
What is your big scope?
The reflector, it's a 10-inch reflector with the ZWO ASI 1600 Pro. And that one it's only an hour and 12 minutes.
I like that. It's only an hour and 12 minutes.
An hour and 12 minutes.
Oh, only 2 hours and 12 minutes, and this is what I got.
Yeah, it's just it's actually some of my old filters, just HA and 03, and also in the oxygen is in the new filter.
You know what you just said there, it just reminds me of the old T-shirt. I only spent an hour imaging this object, and this is all I got. It's like a slogan for a T-shirt.
I'm actually really proud of this one. It's actually on the front of our
beautiful.
ASV manual for 2021. I think it was 2021. Could have been last year.
Oh yeah, yes, I've seen
This year
that
or
one.
last year. I can't remember which one. It's on one of the front.
It's all
front
the same
cover of one
year
of
at the
them.
moment,
I
isn't
think
it?
it was last
The
year.
yearbook.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful image. It's actually really cool. Very, very, very much like this. No.
You got the other ones, Lee?
I do have the other one there as well.
Well, before you, so this is.
But you want?
We want this because they need to talk about it. Steve and Stefan need to talk about it, and Stefan's got to dump Steve. Stefan's got to dump Steve in the the difficult stuff now. So Stefan, you can go first this time.
Oh,
Thank you.
Get ready, Steve. It's coming.
Oh boy. Yeah, so this is
hold on.
honestly...
I'm having problems with my computer. Hold on.
Oh man. This is so what we're looking at here, this is the eastern veil, the eastern portion of the larger veil complex. And this is actually one of my favorite objects in the night sky. It's a supernova remnant. So the remains of a giant star that exploded, 10 to 20,000 years ago in one of the most violent explosions in the entire universe. And that explosion threw off massive shock waves, which have been traveling through space for, tens of thousands of years. And when those shock waves encounter interstellar material, they energize that material, which then re-emits radiation in those typical hydrogen alpha wavelengths and oxygen 3 wavelengths. And so Caleb was pointing out that this particular target is especially strong in the O3 wavelength. And this is fairly typical for supernovae because they release so much energy that they can easily ionize oxygen 3. And so the Veil supernova remnant lies around 2,400 light years away, which is relatively close as our galaxy is concerned. And because of this, it appears very, very large on the night sky. So what we're seeing here, this is just essentially the eastern side, the left-hand side of, sorry, I think I'm getting my cardinal directions mixed up. Doesn't matter. This is just one side of the entire supernova remnant. And if you image this object with a very, very wide field of view, something like a lens, 125 millimeter lens or something like that, you'll be able to capture the entire complex which spans over 3 degrees on the night sky, which is the length of 6 full moons side to side. So this is an enormous, enormous object on the night sky, but given its inherently low surface brightness, we have no chance of seeing it with our naked eye. So it's the object itself is around 130 light years in diameter. So an incredibly, incredibly large structure in and of itself. And the source of this supernova complex was actually a star that was approximately 20 times the mass of our own sun that exploded, like I said, 10 to 20,000 years ago. And when it did that, it would have been so bright that it would have appeared brighter than the planet Venus in our night sky, and would have been so bright that it would be visible during the day. Now, of course, tens of thousands of years later, there's just the sort of ghostly remains of that really powerful explosion. And the reason that we see only this sort of portion of the entire complex is that what we're looking at here is sort of like the surface. If you picture a bubble in front of you, if you look directly through the middle of the bubble, you're not looking through that much material, just the surface at the front and the surface at the back. But if you look through the side of the bubble, you're looking through a lot more material, and so it appears, much more obvious. And it's the same thing with this giant supernova bubble in space. It's hard for us to see the material directly face on because there isn't that much material we're looking through. But when we look at the sides of the explosion, we're looking through a lot more material, and so these sides show up quite brilliantly. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. Other than saying that the shockwave that we're seeing here is still expanding, of course, and will continue to expand until it's diffused out. But at present, the shockwave is still moving at around 420 kilometers per second. And that's so fast that in the time period of the last 20 years, changes to the overall structure of this nebula have actually been observed and photographed. And you can see the evolution, albeit very slight. But yeah, something like this that's expanding at this rate is a great, really long-term project for us astrophotographers. Take a photo now when you're young, and then in 20 years down the track, take another photo and see if you can spot any changes.
Steve, have you got anything technical to add?
Well, as we've gone along here and we've listened to Stefan's wonderful explanation of the Veil Supernova Remnant, I've been crossing out all of the technical details that I've got left. And I think you might have to phone a friend.
Now you know how I feel.
We stumped the Terminator.
Oh, no, there is one thing. It's in the constellation Cygnus. And it's called the Cygnus Loop as well as the Veil Nebula.
There we go. All right, so I think we're going to close it out, but we're going to close it out with a comet from the Comet King. So, so Michael Mattiazzo from Swan Hill, Comet King, who has discovered comets, is going to tell us about this one for us to finish up the night. Once he's finished describing what we're looking at, I'll close the evening down with a couple of notes about what we've been up to.
Unmute myself. Unmuting myself.
Yep.
Yeah. Look, I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning, mate.
Oh, is that all? Come on.
Yeah, Jesus. I tell you, the things you do to image your comet.
Yeah,
it's true.
All right, take it away, Michael.
Okay. Well, this one's Comet 67P, Churyumov-Gerasimenko, discovered in the 60s. I think it was 68 before I was born. It's been around about 8 times since then. This will be the best apparition this year. So it'll reach about 9th magnitude in November. So it's currently about 11.5. It's got a very nice tail on it, by the way, so keep your eyes out on that one, although you'll need to get up early for that. We've also got...
where in the
yep.
sky is it at the moment?
That one around the Taurus region.
The tail is beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, not too bad. It's about 15 arc minutes at this point. And then 4P Fae is
4P Fae. That's the one you were imaging this morning, was
one of
it?
the oldest. Yeah, one of the first periodic comets known, discovered long time ago. It's slightly brighter, about half a magnitude brighter. Similar in appearance. Got a nice little tail on it as well. And that's about its peak brightness. So it's about mag 10.5 to 11.
Spoke about that one in my podcast, actually. And we haven't got the podcast out in time, unfortunately.
Yeah. Sorry.
After this is at its best.
these are all black and white images too. They're not colour.
That doesn't matter. It's still, the tail on that's quite nice as well.
Yeah, well, that's the advantage of the QHY. It's a lot more sensitive, so it picks out a lot fainter detail. And this object here is 8P Tuttle. I observed this back in 2018 at the ASV Dark Sky site with the naked eye.
Cool.
So, but unfortunately, not this time around. It's only going to get to about mag 8.5 at the moment, but it's quite low in the morning sky. So another morning object. So that's So three reasonable morning objects. And this one's a little bit of a surprise too. This one's Comet Master. Comet Master. 2020 F5. So yeah, not too bad, that one, is it? Very nice.
That's very nice. Well, thank you so this is what you spend most of your time doing, is imaging comets and hunting comets. So
I also do astrometry as well. So I actually measure their positions in space.
Yep.
And then submit it to the Minor Planet Center so that they derive orbits, more accurate orbits for them.
So you're doing real science. You're an ASV member who's doing real science.
I'm a scientist. That's right.
These astrophotographers who just create pretty images.
So my backyard is actually a Minor Planet Center observatory code.
Scientist, yes.
Michael, what we're going to need from you fairly soon is the Matiazzo catalogue of non-comets.
No, the Matiazzo catalogue of actual comets.
You could do the opposite, yeah. That will complement Charles's catalogue, won't
Instead of a Messier catalogue, it'll be a Matiazzo catalogue. Instead of just an M, it'll be an MA. MA 21 and MA 22.
I can get down to mag 18, 19, so you'd be looking at quite a lot of these little blobs. There's a lot of blobs out in space.
Well, thank you very much for that, Michael. Thank you very much to everyone. Michael is the Comet King up in the right-hand corner in black.
In darkness, okay.
Yeah.
Turn the light on.
Lee's back. Cloudy McCloudface is back. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. It has been a lot of fun. Actually, before I go through the spiel, Michael, there is a question for you. Ooh. Do comets orbit us multiple times? I'm going to let you answer this one.
Well, it depends on the comet. If the eccentricity is 1.0, the orbit is a parabola, and it won't return. So it depends on the comet. So there are currently about 430 periodic comets that have numbered because they've been seen at more than one appearance, and there are probably another 100 that have been seen for the first time and are awaiting a periodic number assignment once they make their second apparition.
Okay,
so
there we go. A nice, easy answer. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yep. And there's the odd hyperbolic. There are only 2 hyperbolic objects known so far, and they raised a lot of attention. One was Oumuamua, or whatever it was in Hawaiian.
Who am I?
Some people thought that was a
Linda's
spaceship.
Linda's
favourite object.
Yeah, who am I?
Who am I?
The first interstellar object.
Uame. Oh, I can't say it. I call Mares mares, and
No,
Steve cringes every time.
umame is a food type, food
It
sense.
is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
Borisov's
don't
the
even have a
second one.
decent enough grasp of the English language. Michael, you're looking very scary there with a red torch. I will say that.
That's good.
So,
Well, it's
thank
almost
you,
Halloween, isn't it? Still another month.
It is almost Halloween. We do have a Vic South live stream coming up for Halloween because Vic South has been cancelled, unfortunately. So we'll be doing another weekend of live streaming then. We also have International Observe the Moon Night coming up as well, but we've still got 2 more streams to go tomorrow. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Apologies that the clouds didn't play along. They were meant to go away and they didn't. We hope you learnt something interesting about astronomy and about some of the galaxies and the nebula comets that we were looking at tonight. We're back tomorrow from 1 o'clock with the Q&A panel where you can ask our experts, and we have some experts coming on our Q&A panel tomorrow night. Stefan is one of those experts. Ask him anything and he'll answer it because we know he can answer it. He did it tonight. We've got Stefan coming on.
I want to pass the notes, Steve.
We have Claire Kenyon, who deals in black holes and spectra. I hope I got that right, Claire. She'll tell me off in the next podcast or something. We have Steffi Bernard, who gave a talk on Wednesday night about the Hubble Deep Field coming on tomorrow, and Professor Paul Lasky, who deals in gravitational waves. So if you've got a question you'd like to ask of them, you're more than welcome to pop it in the ASV Facebook message and send it through to us, or join us tomorrow and ask it in the chat and we can pop it up on the screen and really put them on the spot. Oh, Andy just disappeared off the screen again, didn't he? He always does that.
I'll be asking plenty of questions.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're not following us on Facebook yet, please follow us on Facebook. We have 2 more streams tomorrow. As I said, we've got the Q&A, and following that at 4 o'clock, we have new astronomers. So anybody who's here, Jody, this one's for you. You're a new astronomer or you're newly into it, come along and at 4 o'clock for that stream and learn what it takes to be a new astronomer and how easy it is to be. So until then, we'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock for our Q&A panel.